Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Oregon Employment Department for today's media briefing. We're going to give everybody just a couple more minutes to join before getting started. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Rebecca Gibson King, and I am the Communications Director for the Oregon Employment Department. Today's speakers are Gail Kremenauer, State Employment Economist, and Agency Director David Gerstenfeld, who is covering for Unemployment Insurance Director Lindsay Leahy while she is out of the office this week. A couple of quick notes. This call is being recorded and we will post the recording online and send out the link after the hearing or the briefing. We'll also be taking questions after the opening remarks. If you have any technical difficulties or are otherwise unable to answer get your question answered, please send an email to us at communications@employ.oregon.gov and we'll be happy to assist you. I will now turn it over to State Employment Economist Gail Kremenauer. Please go ahead, Gail.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This morning, the Employment Department released the unemployment rate and jobs numbers for Oregon in March. Oregon employers added 1,400 jobs to non-farm payrolls, and the unemployment rate was 4.2%. Professional and business services had the largest job gain over the month, adding 2,400. And we saw an increase of 1,000 jobs in government in March. The largest decline was in construction, which lost 2,300 jobs over the month. And roughly half of that decline was in specialty trade contractors, which includes things like electrical work, carpentry, pouring concrete, among other things. Overall, there's been little change in Oregon's total non-farm employment level over the past year. Oregon lost 1,900 jobs over the year, which is a decline of 0.1%. Now, below that top level, trends vary quite a bit across different sectors of Oregon's economy. We've seen gains as large as 14,500 jobs over the past year in private healthcare and social assistance, and we've seen an increase of 9,600 jobs in government over the year. At the same time, several sectors have had notable job declines over the past year. The information sector lost 3,300 jobs, which was a decline of almost 9%. Professional and business services employment fell by 6,100 jobs over the year. We saw manufacturing lose 5,800 jobs over the year. That's a decline of 3%. And retail trade is down by 3,900 jobs, or 1.9%. Oregon's unemployment rate, as I mentioned, was 4.2% in March. That was compared with 3.8% for the US. Now, as a reminder, there are two parts to Oregon's labor force. The employed part includes anybody who's 16 or older in Oregon who isn't in active military or in an institution and who is working. The unemployed part is anybody who doesn't have a job, but is available and able to take a job and has actively sought work in the last 4 months. So what's happened over the past year is that we've seen the size of Oregon's labor force has increased slightly by about 24,500 people. And the employed part of the labor force has been pretty stable over the past year, but we've seen the number of unemployed Oregonians drift up. And so as a result, we've also seen Oregon's unemployment rate drift up from 3.5% last March to 4.2% in March of 2024. Now, at 4.2%, that's still a pretty low unemployment rate by historical standards. And we have seen that Oregon's labor force participation rate has increased recently. In March, labor force participation was at 62.8%, which was the highest rate since October of 2012. And with that, I will hand it over to Director David Gerstenfeld.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you everyone for joining us. As of Sunday, April 14th, we've completed our 6th week of administering unemployment insurance benefits through Francis Online. In that time, we've paid out $81.3 million of benefits through the new system. Since our last media briefing on March 20th, which came just after our 2nd full week in Francis, we've seen a significant increase in customers successfully using Francis Online. As an example, the number of timely weekly claims filed has leveled out at about 30,000 for each week for the past 4 weeks. This aligns with the seasonal trends for this time of year and shows that most people have acclimated to the new system. The percentage of people who are using Francis Online to file their claim has also risen steadily. In the first 2 weeks, that percentage was 81% and 87% respectively, about in line with the percentage of people who filed using our legacy online claim system. Over the past month, though, that figure has continued to climb, reaching about 92.5% last week. So more people are filing their claims through Francis Online than were able to do so under our old systems. While the system has been working as intended, and more people are getting used to Francis, we know that the transition has been difficult for some because they haven't been able to get through to us. Another challenge is how long it's taking us to review and approve some claims. Unfortunately, both of these were taking longer than we would like prior to rolling out Francis for UI benefits and remain that way. We know people are already facing really difficult situations with the loss of employment, and we know that waiting any amount of time for that first benefit check is difficult. We also acknowledge it's been especially frustrating when they can't get through to us on the phone or when they have to wait on hold for long periods of time to do so. While more people are able to use the new system successfully than our old one, and while many people's claims are being handled quickly, we know that that is no consolation to the individuals who are having to wait. We're committed to providing the best customer service possible, and we've known for quite some time that there are two big things we need to do that. One is having the right tools, and we're confident with the flexibility and improvements we're already seeing, we have the right tools with Francis Online. The second thing we need is enough employees to help the many people relying on us for assistance. Our staffing levels remain low compared to our workload due to chronic federal underfunding. There is some good news, however, in that the governor recently signed House Bill 4035, which the legislature passed earlier this year. We explained that we could not provide the customer service levels the public deserves without additional funding, so we appreciate the support from the legislature and the governor to help address this situation. House Bill 4035 becomes effective this June and will provide additional administrative funding for 72 positions. The positive impacts of this bill will be felt towards the second half of the year at the earliest, as it does take time to hire and train new employees. With more employees on the way, we continue to refine our processes and our systems. We found that a significant portion of the people who are calling us are doing so just to get an update on the status of their claim. We believe the adjudication process, which is taking us longer than we'd like, is a contributing factor here. That was unfortunately the case prior to the launch of Francis as well, and is also primarily driven by our staffing levels. People are understandably anxious for us to resolve any issues with their claim and are reaching out to us for updates. But we also believe that the transition to Francis is playing a role. People seeking benefits now have the ability to see more of their claim status online than they could before, and naturally have questions when they see their claim marked as in suspense, which usually means we found an issue that we need to investigate. This is an example of where we're updating Francis to better serve the public. We're working on improvements now to Francis Online to make the language around claim status easier to understand and more informative for people seeking benefits. We're also happy to report that Francis is helping to expedite the adjudication of some claim issues. For example, when a claim is flagged because of a potential weekly eligibility issues, in many cases, the new system is automatically creating a questionnaire to help us get the information we need to resolve the issue. Claimants are able to respond much faster using their Francis Online account than they were in the legacy systems, which often required a phone call to the person to gather the needed information. The flexibility of the system has already allowed us to quickly implement many improvements. As we continue to listen to customer feedback and analyze the system, we're hopeful that each adjustment will result in additional progress and a better experience for our customers. While having more trained staff is key to speeding up adjudication and making it easier for people to contact us, we're also currently exploring all options and tactics to resolve claims as quickly as possible. We're applying the lessons we learned from the pandemic, such as moving people around to do the tasks that are most needed, whether that's answering phones or processing claims. We're looking at how we can further automate some processes. We're actively training our staff so they have the skills to be more efficient. We're using our website and social media to proactively communicate to the customers about issues and tips for how to use Francis Online most effectively. We know what's causing many people to call us or is causing delays in claims, and we have employees that have the right skills and experience focusing on resolving those issues as quickly as possible, so people don't have to call us to check on the status of their claims. Our employees are working significant overtime, including evenings and weekends. We're refining the telephone queue options in our system to better focus our employees' efforts to help people calling us. Our employees are quickly gaining proficiency in using our new live chat function so they can handle more simultaneous live chats. Employees from other parts of the agency are helping serve those needing assistance with their UI claim. We're working to provide more upfront information to people about anticipated timelines so they know what to expect and don't have to call to ask how long certain parts of the process might take. We're already recruiting for additional positions we can now afford to pay for thanks to the passage of House Bill 4035. And importantly, we're continually monitoring the feedback from the public, making adjustments to Francis, and providing information to help make processes easier. There are some helpful tips we hope you'll share with the public that will also help us serve them more effectively and more quickly. If somebody submits a request to us, they should do so only once. We review each and every request that comes into us, and it slows us down if we're reviewing several duplicate requests for the same issue. And please give us time to process the request before following up when information is being changed, such as updating an address in the system. Some changes don't happen automatically, and it may take a few days for the changes to show up in the account. We're focused first and foremost on getting to the customer service levels that we know the public deserves, while at the same time, we're working to share more data with the public about how our program is doing. We're seeing progress in all of these areas. When we know the time it takes to hire and train more employees is more than people want, we're doing everything that we can to speed up that process, and as I mentioned, to take any other actions we can to help those whose claims have not been handled as quickly as we'd like. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Rebecca for the question and answer portion.
Great. Thank you, David. We are now going to open up the lines to members of the media who would like to ask questions. If you're joining us by phone, please make sure to hit *6 to unmute yourself. As a courtesy, please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up question. And if you don't get your question answered today, please simply email it to us at communications@employee.oregon.gov, and we'd be happy to get the answers for you. And I'm going to go up to the top. First person who has their hand raised is Christina Giardelli with K2. So let me allow you to talk. Okay, go ahead, Christina.
Thank you for taking questions. You mentioned that the issues that you're experiencing right now and the delays that you're experiencing are the same ones that you were experiencing prior to Francis. Can you shed any clarity on why then we're getting so many calls now from applicants with major issues? I mean, I've talked to people who are homeless now because of some of these issues. Why is this happening now, whereas before we were not getting these calls as media?
I can't tell you why people are calling the media. I think there's been a lot more media attention, and frankly, the launch of a major new system in and of itself generates some more attention. But when we look at the data that we have about call wait times, how long it's taking to process claims, even before the launch of Francis, I was sharing with the legislature that we were not where we wanted to be, that we knew that it was taking too long, that it was causing real hardship for some Oregonians. And that's why we went to ask for the additional funding so that we could have additional staff. So these are problems that pre-existed the launch of Francis. I think there's a bump as everybody, all the public users, people seeking benefits, adjust to a new system as our employees do. But I've shared some of the information that we've seen where that bump we think we're over, and we're actually seeing some efficiencies and increased self-serve usage of Francis compared to our old legacy systems.
Did you have a follow-up question, Christina?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So when it comes to people who are becoming homeless while they're waiting for these claims, is there anything that your department is looking at perhaps with the legislature to make sure there's some systems in place that will stop them from becoming homeless?
Well, I think homelessness is one of the top priorities for the governor, and it's a massive problem throughout the state. for a number of people, many of whom aren't eligible for unemployment insurance benefits, may not be applying for unemployment insurance benefits. What we're able to do is really look at how we can prioritize helping people who we know are facing dire situations. And we are doing that, and we're having discussions about how we can do it most effectively. But that includes whenever we become aware of somebody who is facing potential homelessness, of prioritizing their claim, we escalate it to teams of experts who work on those and try to get them handled absolutely as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, homelessness is a massive problem, and the majority of people are likely not seeking unemployment insurance benefits, but we're doing everything that we can for our part to make sure that if somebody is seeking unemployment insurance benefits and getting those might help them retain or get housing to expedite their claims.
And the difficulties that people encounter once they do become homeless, or just difficulties as a result of not getting paid in a timely manner, are resulting in things like them not being able to access their phone, so then they can't access Francis through the authentication system. Or if they don't have a physical address for you guys to send stuff to, they're missing important information. Are there things that your agency is doing to make sure people who have already become homeless while waiting for claims can still access the service?
So we have a lot of options to provide services to people. One of our strategies was to make it as easy as possible for most people to self-serve, because that really is helpful. And when we know we have limited staff resources, it means our employees can then focus on the people who need more assistance. We are seeing some success there, as I shared, with more self-serve usage in Francis Online. For people who aren't able to do that, and this sometimes are people that are unhoused when they first contact us to seek unemployment insurance benefits. It's people that are facing any number of barriers. We do have alternatives, and that can range from calling us using a phone. As I said, I know that right now the wait times are not what we want them to be, and we're really focused on getting those better. People can submit messages to us, and if they are only available at certain times, for instance, they can leave a message with a date and time and phone number if they're facing a dire circumstance, so we can try to reach out to them at that designated time. We also, our WorkSource Oregon offices don't have experts who actually administer the unemployment insurance and paid leave Oregon programs. They do have computers that the public can use and phones that the public can use to get in touch with us to file claims. And I'll also point out there's a lot of other really good resources that those offices are able to connect people to, including helping people find jobs and sometimes training and other services and supports, whether they're seeking unemployment insurance benefits or not.
Great. Okay, next person who raised their hand was Ariel Salk with Coin.
Hi, thank you so much for taking our questions today. First, I have a three-part question. First, issues with Francis. I spoke to the one woman today who says her claim, which started before Francis, has only been exacerbated since the transition. She's still waiting on her checks. She's called, she's communicated, she's put in the paperwork. It's just she's not getting the money she needs, which is going to lead to homelessness, which I do want to note. Over half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So earlier when you mentioned that you elevate claims if they're on the brink of homelessness, I have to question. That would be a handful of your folks out there. My second question is, I reached out earlier this week and your office mentioned streamlining the application process with paid leave. How are you planning on doing that? And how are you applying that to unemployment, or if you're applying that to unemployment? And, staff issues. We've been talking about this since back in COVID. This is not an issue that is new for this department. What are you all doing? I know you're waiting for this funding, but there's got to be is there something that's can be done with the staffing or getting this stuff streamlined before June? Because like I said, majority of the people I've talked to tell me they're weeks away from losing everything.
So I'm going to try to answer. I think there were multiple questions, so if I miss some of them, please let me know.
Sure.
I think your first one was about somebody whose claim is taking too long to be addressed. It's really hard for me to answer it without having specifics, and I hope that you will share offline, not now, because we want to protect confidentiality, but that you'll share the person's name with us so that we can follow up and resolve the claim. Without being able to look at what's going on specifically, I can't say if there may have been an error that was made on our part. Unfortunately, as I said, we deal with people all the time who are in very desperate situations. Sometimes they're not eligible for the benefits from the programs we serve. So really don't know without looking at that individual case, but I hope that offline you'll share that so that we can follow up. And you're right, there are a large number of people that are in really difficult situations, including homelessness, which is, as I said, we recognize, and it's one of the governor's top priorities is combating that. The unemployment insurance program cannot on its own stop homelessness. We are doing everything we can when, as I said, if we learn that somebody is in dire situations, facing imminent homelessness, we do try to escalate those and resolve them as quickly as we can. And that is a challenge when we don't have enough staff to handle all the claims as quickly as we would like. Our goal is to get to where we have to escalate many fewer because we are handling all of the claims much more quickly. I will say that right now we still are handling a lot of those unemployment insurance claims quite quickly. So over half of the people seeking benefits receive their first benefit payment within a week of filing their claim. And while we know that that's great for those people, as we're talking about, for each individual person who isn't getting their benefits that quickly, it is a challenge, and we're doing what we can to speed the process up. I think you asked a question then about talking about streamlining the paid leave Oregon process and whether changes made to that program will also be applied to unemployment insurance. And the answer is it depends. There are some parts of the process that apply to people, whether they're applying for paid leave Oregon or whether they're applying for unemployment insurance benefits. And certainly both programs are in close communication. They're learning from each other and making adjustments to make the experience as similar as possible. So if people have used one program, it's easier for them to navigate through the other. So there are changes that we've made to one program that we're able to implement in the other as well. There are some real differences between the programs as well, though, including for the unemployment insurance program, a significant layer of federal requirements that have to be followed that are not there for the paid leave program. And there's just some different issues of determining eligibility. So paid leave, for example, is often looking at getting required medical documentation. That can be a challenge for some people, getting the right documentation from their healthcare provider. That is not typically an issue for the unemployment insurance program. So I think at a high level where we can, we are sharing those efficiencies, but we're also looking for some efficiencies that will be program specific. And I think your last question had to do with the staffing levels and what we're doing. And you're right, the staffing challenge is not new for the Oregon Employment Department, and particularly for the unemployment insurance program. And I know when I was talking to the legislature about this, I shared that we have been underfunded for decades. The federal government provides states money to run unemployment insurance programs, and it has been underfunding that administration for decades. As an example, I shared some statistics about the decrease in our staffing. So while we have implemented a lot of process improvements and implemented new tools, and our employees have been doing amazing work, over approximately the past 2 years, while our unemployment insurance workload has remained relatively steady, we've lost over 2/3 of our employees who are doing unemployment insurance work because we didn't have adequate federal funding to keep them. So when you lose 2/3 of your workforce and the number of people seeking benefits are about the same, we haven't been able to maintain service levels, and the public feels that pain, as do we. In terms of what we're doing, the House bill that was passed is not effective until June. We're not waiting until then. So we are actively recruiting now, and we are going to hire and train people as quickly as possible. As I said, it does take some time to both hire people and to get them trained so that when the person needing help gets through on the phone, the person that they're talking to can help them and provide the assistance that is needed. I'm thankful, though, that the change that was made in House Bill 4035 is not a one-time change. It is an ongoing change. So we're hopeful that this will provide some long-term higher staffing levels. And if after we get people trained up and we're seeing what levels of customer service we can provide, if we don't feel that it's enough, that we think that the public still is not able to get their benefits quickly enough, that's something that we will go back to the legislature and share what our findings are and what we think the impacts are on the public.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Mike Rogoy with the Oregonian. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Hi, David. I'm hearing a different tone from you from what we heard initially after the month. Am I hearing right? Has your perception of the situation for UI applicants changed over the past weeks?
I don't think so. I think in terms of the first couple of weeks, we were very concerned because it was such a new system that there might be some systemic issue with the technology or with how it was configured that would be causing large-scale problems. And that's something that we were watching closely for. We haven't seen that. I've shared some of the positives that we've seen. We also have been talking, as we've been talking about today for quite some time, about us really needing more staff to get to the customer service levels that are needed. We see that on the horizon, but when we look at the time that it will take to get people trained up, we know that it's a painful situation for people, and we're doing everything that we can to mitigate that and to get things going smoothly kind of in the meantime while we're doing that hiring and training. So I don't think it's a real shift. I think it's a relief that the new system seems to be working well. We're frankly able to go in and start making a lot more adjustments now. But before we went live with the new system and now, there are some people that are having to wait too long, and we're doing what we can to address that. It is a little bit different situation now that the House bill has passed, and we know that there is some long-term additional staffing on the way. It gives us a little bit more flexibility to take temporary short-term measures to help bridge the gap that really aren't sustainable to do as a long-term permanent measure. We can't have all of our existing employees working large amounts of overtime on a permanent basis, or they get burned out and then we lose more of our skilled, valuable employees, and that just makes things worse.
All right. It does seem like, given the issues that you were facing with funding and things before Francis launched, and then there were additional complications with Francis. We had a bucket that was nearly full of concerns before Francis launched. Then Francis, we'll take it for granted at the moment that it's working as anticipated, but it did cause some confusion as people got accustomed to it, and the bucket sort of overflowed. I wonder if in hindsight, it would have been smarter to wait till the second half of the year to launch the system when you had more personnel on board.
I've shared before, there's never an ideal time because there's always a big adjustment because we're talking about having tens of thousands of people who are using the system each week switch over, and our employees. And the projects like this are at such a large scale that you can't change the go live date on short notice. There's a huge amount of coordination, not just with all of our employees, but with all of the systems and other agencies at the state and federal level that our systems connect with, the testing that's required, and synchronizing the timing. We didn't know that House Bill 4035 was going to pass until quite recently, well after the go live date had been established. And we really, at that point, it would not have been helpful to stop all of those plans and spend a lot of energy changing the timeline of when the go live would be. So if we had known years ago that we would be getting additional funding at a certain point this year, we might have made a different choice. But with the way things played out, I don't think that we would have done that any differently. This also, frankly, gives us a little longer period of having the low seasonal workload. If we went live, say, in September, after we had much more of a chance to hire people we now know and get them trained, we'd be facing pretty quickly the start of our significant seasonal increase in workload. And this gives us a lower workload time to go in and make those refinements and enhancements to make the system work better.
Okay, and one last question real quick, David. You and I have talked before about the ombudsman possibility. You know, when I see notes that state lawmakers and their staff, for example, are sending to people who are trying to communicate with your agency, they're coming at it with a fairly different perspective than your agency does. And I wonder if having that, if you're given any more thought to the idea of having an ombudsman out there who might have a different perspective than the staff who's actually administering the program, and might provide a different voice inside the agency for how it sets its priorities.
Sure, we have given it a lot of thought. And I do see that there is some value in having that different perspective and different voice. Right now, I don't think that is the highest use of our limited funds. Right now, it's very clear that one of the most important things is getting people the benefits that they're eligible for as quickly as possible. And for some people, that means quicker than we're able to right now. It means answering the calls and having quicker communication channels. We don't need an ombudsperson to tell us that people want to be able to get through on the phones more easily, and that the people whose claims are taking too long want those claims to be addressed more quickly. At this point, we think that it is much more effective to focus our resources on having people answering the phones, processing the claims, doing the adjudication. If we're at a stage where we are able to do the things that we know need to be done, I think it might be a different decision. That being said, we are constantly looking for the other perspectives. So we talk to legislators, we talk to individual people who are seeking benefits, to employers. That's not the same as having a dedicated office, but right now we think the best use of our resources is to have as many people as possible helping process those claims and get people their benefits as quickly as we can.
Thanks, David.
Okay, next up is Kyra Buckley with OPB. Go ahead, Kyra.
Hi, thank you guys so much for taking my questions. David, I appreciate you addressing the process of adjudication, and I have a question about that. My understanding from talking to some of your wonderful staff who's been willing to be on the phone and discuss the process with me this week is that right now, because of the migration to Francis, that you're not able to quantify how many cases have currently been flagged for adjudication, or an average of how long adjudication is taking. I'm wondering, am I understanding that correctly? And do we know when you might be able to share that information again?
Sure. And Kyra, I'm going to repeat back the question because your voice is coming through a little bit garbled, and I want to make sure I have it. I think you were asking for confirmation from what you've heard from others that right now we're not able to quantify kind of how many people are have their claims in adjudication, or what the time frames are for all of those claims. Is that the gist of it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I'm in the newsroom today.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I was answering the question you were actually asking. So that is correct. We have some great teams of data experts who, in our old legacy systems, had put together some very refined reports that helped us see quite clearly, especially given the kind of spaghetti network of systems, where the claims were. It took years and years to get those level of reports. Fortunately, the new system that we have, it's not just new technology, it's also a new process in terms of how we are handling the work. So it means that the old reports that we had can't just transfer over and give us the same kind of insights. We're handling the work differently. We are actively working on reports that we intend to share publicly that give insights into the adjudication process. It's important to us to have that, to share the information with the public about how we're doing, and to make sure that it's accurate. So we're working on it. We have regular check-ins. I can't give you an exact date because as soon as we know that we have the accurate, validated data, we're going to start sharing that. My hope is that within the next few weeks, we'll be able to start sharing some of that data, though.
Awesome, thank you. And then my next question is just knowing that the funding from the legislature is coming and that people will be hopefully become more familiar with Francis Online, Are you confident that some of the issues we're seeing now will, be alleviated or get better over the next few months?
Sure, I'm confident that after we get the higher staffing levels, that things will improve. That we'll be able to continue to refine Francis Online to make it even more effective. I mentioned earlier that we are hopeful that it means we get to the customer service levels that we want, that the public wants, that the public deserves. I think that we will be able to do that, but we're watching really closely. And if it turns out that even with the refinements that we make and the additional staffing that we're not there, then we will share that as we've shared before when we felt that we weren't able to provide the required customer service. My hope, though, is that we will be there. I am confident that we will see significant improvement. I don't know yet with certainty whether it will get us all the way to where we want to be or not.
Thanks for taking my questions.
Okay, as a reminder, this call has been recorded and we will send out the link to everybody who RSVP'd. We will also post it on the media page at www.oregon.gov/employee under news and agency info. If you didn't get your question answered today, please either call us or send us an email at communications@employee.oregon.gov. Thank you to everyone who participated and for your partnership for keeping Oregonians informed about the valuable services provided by the Employment Department. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.